Welcome to the Exhaust Notes podcast.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes podcast, where we talk about Formula One, Max Verstappen, more Max Verstappen, more Max Verstappen, and hot takes. What's good, guys? How you doing?
Here's the hottest take I'm going to say. Max Verstappen's not losing another race this year. It's just not possible.
Is that a hot take,
that way.
though?
It's not. I need something. I need something to spice up the marriage that is Formula One and Road Malhotra, but I digress. Todd, how are you feeling about all of this?
I think this is going to come off as weird, but that was a really entertaining race. As much as I talk about the boring races, like on a track that's typically hard to pass on, there was, as per usual, a really, really good midfield battle. Alonso showing that he's not a day over 17. Still fighting through the midfields and the strategy. It was a race of strategy, and it was really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the conversation over around the flares too, considering it's the Dutch Grand Prix, the Heineken Dutch Grand Prix. Sorry, Heineken, you can sponsor us as well whenever you're ready. Just let us know.
Link in bio. I'll happily drink your 0.0 beers.
I will take up drinking if you. No, I won't do that. But
it's non-alcoholic. You can drink those, bro.
Oh, that's true. I know. I like those commercials with Rosberg and his dad. I'm like, how many beers did Mr. Rosberg drink to get to that size compared to where he was when he was a race car driver? But I digress. That's the fat shame of the week. I'm sorry. I apologize. If you want to complain about it, you can find me at various social medias at TravPete. Come on the show, you coward.
Got that in there early.
Yeah,
what do you do?
For real.
The pretzels
All right,
make me thirsty.
Before we get into the race results, let's read this review from Jackal7700. Over on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't left us a review, you can do so over there. You can always hit follow on Spotify, and you can also leave us reviews on Amazon Music if you listen to us over there. But Jackal's a very active member of our Discord community, which will be the first link in the description wherever you're listening to this. And his review for us says, note from an unseen listener, the Exhaust Notes podcast is to Formula One as Top Gear, BBC version, of course, was to car enthusiasts. Is this a hot take or one of the best compliments I could offer? You decide. You don't need to be a fan of Formula One to start listening and enjoy this podcast. The presenters have great chemistry and make sure to emphasize explaining details along the way to help bring new fans to the sport. And though they are not yet to the level of Clarkson, Hammond, and May, their banter throughout the episodes will have you chuckling along with them as you listen at home. This podcast and the Discord community along with it has made this Formula One season my favorite yet. Well, thank you, Jackal. We appreciate that. And I mean, I don't want to give it away, but I'm leaning towards hot take on that comparison, just as a Top Gear fan myself. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot take. As contentious as Jeremy Clarkson he's like my favorite thing to ever happen to TV. So I would not put myself in the same even stratosphere as him. So thank you very much, Jackal. That's amazing.
Yeah. I will say this, if we had to detail this segment, this is 3 moderately paid stars operating in a podcasting bar. Is that one? Is that one of the things? Am I hip? Am I cool? No. As always, these reviews really get us verklempt if we can be our inner Linda Reichman. But thank you, Jackal, for the love, and we appreciate you being a member of the community. And I know we sound like a broken record, but there's a reason why we ask for these reviews. One, it gives us that internal boost to keep going with the show, but then it's also a reflection of the amount of work we put in, because at the end of the day, we just want to make you guys laugh as much as we make each other laugh. And if you can get any sort of solace from us, regardless how absurd the statements are, and granted, they are pretty absurd statements on this episode, we thank you for that. So,
and I'm going to go out on a limb here as speaking as a McLaren fan for another McLaren fan and for a Ferrari fan. we're probably all three in agreement that the podcast, the Discord community, and this season of Formula One is the best yet. And that's saying a lot considering, I mean, we should all be in tears right now the way the season has gone. So,
fan of the racing first. McLaren
It's a
second.
good game. All cars tried hard.
I just hope everybody has a good time.
I'm here for the fellowship.
no, but seriously, Jackal, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We'll see you on race day, always in the Discord. And let's talk about these results, because I'm pretty sure none of us predicted the top three this week, right? Even though we probably should have.
I got kind of close because I had the wrong Ferrari in there, but I had Max, George, and Carlos. But instead, the actual race results are as follows: Max Verstappen in his customary first, George Russell continuing to be the new Mr. Consistency in second, Charles Leclerc with a relatively new podium place because he hasn't been there in a while in third. Then we've got Lewis Hamilton, who probably had the most frustration out of any driver this week, followed by Sergio Perez, and then Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris in seventh, Carlos Sainz in eighth, in what one of my co-hosts described as a continually bad string of luck. Then the Esteban himself, Esteban Ocon in ninth, followed by Lance Stroll in 10th. And then we go away from the points and go with Pierre Gasly in 11th, Alexander Albon in 12th, Mick Schumacher in 13th, Seb Vettel in 14th, Kevin Magnussen in 15th, Zhou Guan Yu in 16th, Daniel Ricciardo, once again, 17th, Nicholas Latifi, 18th, and then the two DNFs, Valtteri Bottas, and a questionable Yuki Tsunoda. Guys, where do we want to pick the bones first?
I'm going to challenge you on the most frustrating weekend, because I would say that Carlos probably thought he had a worse weekend than Hamilton.
No. I have enough self-awareness, and I'm not going to feed the monster that is the Ferrari sorrow machine. It was Lewis, because he was in pole position. He was going to win. Every time we've had this show, I want to say the last 4 or 5 weeks, I inevitably try to work in this conversation of what's going to happen first. Lewis winning a race this year or Max winning all the remaining races? And this, I think, is as close as Lewis is going to get to winning a race. So I would be very frustrated because now I don't think he's going to win a race this year.
I think Carlos has come to expect the shit show that is Ferrari, right? Like, it's almost like if it's remotely close to being not too good to be true, but like good enough to be average, Carlos should be expecting for worse things to happen, right? Like, if he's top 5, the team's going to screw it up. That should be his mentality going into the weekend from now on.
But let's recap here for sanity's sake. Just a quick versus, right? Lewis had great pace, saved fourth, even on mediums. Everybody else started on soft. Spent the majority of the race, not the majority, but a large chunk of the race in first, as you mentioned, Ro. And then, due to basically things outside of his control and an aggressive call from George wanting the softs, kind of left him high and dry for that restart, 11 laps to go, right? He was in first with 11 laps to go. Let's talk about Carlos's race. Second corner, Lewis ran into him, so he got a little bit of damage. He immediately was slow. I don't know if it was necessarily because of the damage, but he said they just went the wrong way with the setup. His whole first stint sucked. He then pitted, and they had 3 of his 4 tires. Then during the that was I think it was like a 40-second pit stop. I don't know. He was stationary for like 13 seconds. Then during the first virtual safety car, or the first safety car, they did unsafe release. Then what else? It was so bad. What else happened to Carlos?
But see, that's part of my argument. He just becomes numb to it all. It's one sad everybody hurts montage.
I guess, which is crazy.
Point, go for it.
No, it was crazy because we're used to talking about Leclerc in this situation because he was actually fighting for the championship at one point. And Sainz in the last several races has almost burnt to death, gotten punted off the track. What else? This race happened and everything else I just said, and I feel like I'm forgetting something from this race. He's just like, he's been way, I feel like, more unlucky this season than Leclerc has. Leclerc's done some of it to himself. Ferrari, what the? I know we're beating a dead horse here, but I feel like we have to start here.
Well, that horse should be prancing, and it's not, Todd.
Yes, we're beating the dead horse.
We're beating a dead horse. We've literally beat it to death, and now we are trying to reanimate its corpse so then we can dance another jig on its grave. But
yes,
I did like
turn it into glue officially.
Yeah, it's crazy glue at this point because of how bad things have gotten.
So, a serious question.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. You had something.
No, it's fine. You know me. I'm just gonna call an ISO, and then it's gonna be the audio equivalent of me dribbling for 23 out of the 24 seconds before I put up an uncontested layup or find one of you in the corner and hope you make 3. But go ahead. I'm giving you the ball with 12 seconds.
Thanks. I have a question for you. What seriously has to happen at Ferrari for them to make a change? Because again, it was so apparently this is a pretty short track, and they have there's a tire engineer or a mechanics engineer, they say, that has the ability to call back to the pit wall and say, that's too soon. We can't get the tires out in time. That didn't happen. So like there's just so much miscommunication and everyone's so on edge from fucking up that they continue to fuck themselves up. And Bonatto was after the race, like, oh, mistakes, this, that, just like it's just par for the course. Is Bonatto in a hot seat, or what actually has to happen in Ferrari to make some changes around there? Because something is lacking.
Nick, do you want to go first? Because I've got thoughts, because this is why there's a podcast and I'm associated with it.
I mean, sure. I think it's one of those weird situations where we're all hoping somebody gives Max a run for his money, right? So like, yes, there's a lot of stuff that's been messed up at Ferrari this season, but the trajectory of the team is still upwards, right? So I can't see a situation where they're just like, let's blow it all up. And to your point, Todd, if there is great leadership within that organization at any level, they should recognize that the added stress is coming from people trying not to fuck up instead of trying to do their job, right? Like, look, you're all professionals. You've been doing this. Like, just go out there, do what you got to do, and move forward. And I think that's the problem, is that internally you're probably spot on. It's probably like a bunch of people that are just feeling the stress, and if they can't just go out there and get a win, which they haven't, right? It's been a while, I should say. And until that happens again, you're going to have that stress, right? Regardless of which driver gets the win, in my opinion. It's just the team needs to get a win in order to like bring it back down to like not boiling, just put the lid on it. Let the pasta cook a little bit longer, but just turn down the heat and everybody will be okay.
Simmer, as my Cajun friends like to say. I will say this. What race is next on the schedule?
Monza.
What team is most closely associated with said track?
Ferrari.
I think they're going to save their coup de grace for this race. Whatever fuck up they have in them, it's going to be the big one. And I think that's where it's going to be walking orders for all these guys, because they've always had this belief that, you know what, our season can go to shit. Our drivers are going to be terrible. Our car is useless, but we will always have Monza. It's one of the weirdest rallying cries I've ever seen in sports. If something happens where they give up a lead or they ruin somebody's podium and it's a DNF, I think that's when it's going to be there, because it's literally so close to the forest that you've got the world's eyes on you at your signature race. that is going to be, for me, the ultimate barometer. Because if they mess up, and it's a question of if and not when, no, I'm sorry, it's a question of when and not if, apologies, I misspoke, then I'm going to need to know what's going to happen. Because the Italian people are very proud people, and you can say a lot of different things to them. You can be very derogatory to them in a couple of different ways. But for it to happen on their home soil, that's where I'm going to pay attention. And this is almost too morbid to say, but the only other thing I can think of is if somebody, I don't want to say loses their life, but has a severe injury that affects their racing career, whether it's a strategist, whether it's a pit crew member that just didn't get out of the way during an unsafe release, that's when I think also heads may fly. Because they've literally hit the bingo card of ineptitude with everything else this year.
So, how many burritos and how many Capri Suns do you want to bet that Max beats the Ferraris by double-digit seconds?
Oh, no, I was going to ask you this. Like, take the combined point total of both Ferraris, and will it equal the 25 or will it exceed the 25 that Max is inevitably going to score?
Ooh.
Because I do love a convoluted bet.
That's a really convoluted bet. It's going to exceed. I would see. So the reason I say that, and the reason I was saying like let's bet, because you turned me into a degenerate about betting food and beverages on F1 races. This race that we had at Zandvoort this weekend was supposed to be Ferrari's track. It wasn't supposed to suit the Red Bull. It wasn't, and it looked like that all weekend, right? In FP1, Max's car stopped for whatever reason, mechanical fault, can't remember exactly. The FP2, they were all over the shop with their setup, and the timing wasn't there. They were like a second down off the leading pace. FP3 made a couple changes, looked a little better, but still off the pace. Qualifying happens, he gets pole. Like it really is just, he's inevitable. He's Thanos. But Monza is named the Temple of Speed for a reason. It's one of the fastest tracks on the calendar. Red Bull's the fastest car in a straight line, which this is mostly just straight lines. I could see it being like multiple double-digit second win for Max. But I think Ferrari, based on what you said, they're going to do everything they can to just not fuck up. Maybe what Nick said is right. Maybe they go into this race with, hey guys, don't worry about messing up. Just do your jobs. Like, maybe try to give a relaxed feel to the team. Feels like they're all just taking their long Italian lunches and sipping on wine, and
that's when they're going to mess up the most. Because I've been in that mental spiral where everything I do, I turn into Kevin Malone handling the pot of chili. And the worst thing you can tell me is, you know what, Ro? It can't get much worse. Because if your boy has a LinkedIn competency that he would like to be endorsed by his peers and people in his network, it's the improvisational nature of finding failure and French kissing it. Or in this case, Italian kissing it. Because that's what Ferrari is going to do. You can't convince me otherwise.
I mean, the real question is not if Max is going to win by how many points. The real question is this officially, does Monza officially become Max's 6th home race of the season when he wins?
They're going to call it Maxa after this. I'm ready for the harebrained Red Bull apparel. It's going to be like Maxa, and it's going to be the Red Bull colorway that's in red, because that would be the ultimate FU to Ferrari.
Oh god, they'd come out with a red livery at Monza. No, I'm
because Ferrari's not going to be there. They're apparently they have a yellow livery or yellow apparel for the weekend because they're really scared. I keep getting bombarded by Instagram ads about check out our new apparel for Monza, and it's just yellow shirts, and I'm like, not the time, guys. Let's distance ourselves from that particular palette of our logo.
It's better than the hot pink merch that Merck came out with.
Yeah.
No, at this point, it's not. Because then you can be like, breast cancer awareness. Who hates breast cancer? Everyone.
I do think that it is kind of interesting going into Monza, though, right? Like this is like the make or break point, in my opinion, and how it's handled could go two ways, right? You could look at it and say, oh shit, this is the place where we have to perform. We have to be on our best for our fans, or take a chill pill, guys. Let's just finish the weekend strong. These people are going to love us regardless of what we do, and it's going to be okay. And I'd love to actually be, in the meeting room when those, kind of talking points are dished out. Cause I feel like there's not going to be change. There's not going to be major change at Ferrari, in my opinion. But I think that the feeling of that is like, this is the breaking point for that feeling, right? Like if they can't get past this at this race, then I mean, I don't know that they actually make changes. I guess I don't think they actually make changes, but I think that from my perspective, changes have to happen after this race. I don't see Ferrari doing anything about it. I think it's just, this is how we go. And this is, and maybe it's if Mercedes catches them, right? They're 30 points behind at this point. They're actually making some strides to catch, in the constructor standings, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, they're. Wait, where are they? Team
30 points exactly. Ferrari's at 376. Mercedes is at 346, if I remember.
So that's a better bet. Going back to your earlier question, I think Ferrari's sum total between the drivers will beat Max's 25 eventual 25 or 26 points probably, but not by a lot. It'll be a few points here and there.
Okay, fair. Let's do it. A case of your finest wild cherry Capri Sun. Or was that the contaminated one? Like one of the Capri Sun flavors was contaminated recently, so it has to be that one because I want to test the failure.
I only drink Echo.
Now, I was going to ask you both this because you guys are also, as much as you are Formula One fans and sneakerheads, you're pop culture savants. If you guys had to give Ferrari a inspirational speech, which one would you go? Because for me, I'm leaning towards either the replacements where it's like quicksand. You just have to acknowledge that there are mistakes, but we can rise above them as a team if we're competent. And then another part of me wants them to listen to the Al Pacino Any Given Sunday Inches speech. And then another part of me wants them to just watch Al Pacino in Heat and realize that everything he did in that movie was through the lens of inhaling a Mount Kilimanjaro amount of cocaine. And that's how I would describe Ferrari's strategy this year, is inhaling that large of copious amounts of cocaine and then just letting it fly.
They're way too relaxed on the pit wall to be on cocaine. I would go with Herb Brooks from Miracle. That speech.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm going in completely opposite direction. I'm literally just putting, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Mattia Binotto.
Nick Engel.
If you can't get this, if you can't get the team laughing at that point, you definitely got to figure something else out.
There's the card for the next podcast.
Yeah.
Just make that graphic. Just Photoshop that graphic and put Mattia Binotto under it. Oh, shit. That's hilarious. Okay, so I feel like we beat the horse into glue now. You guys want to move on to the Verstappen versus Mercedes thing? What happened there? So, as I was talking about in the pre-show, due to Mercedes' strategy of going to the hard tire early or starting on the mediums, which gave them kind of two different ways to go on strategy. They could have gone medium soft, or medium soft medium, or whatever they needed to. They ended up in the lead of the race due to running long on the mediums. Everyone else had to pit. They were still they got track position that way and were still putting in pretty good lap times on the mediums. I think it was I can't remember what it was. Somewhere in the late 20s to 30s, they pitted for hards. Quick note, again, Alpine was the innovators here. They pitted Alonso for hards pretty early. And again, it did seem like nobody on the grid paid attention to the times he was putting in because he was flying still on the hards. I guess Mercedes did because they put Lewis and George on the hards, and Verstappen pitted to the medium, which he had which in effect gave them track position because he would have to pit again. And they were keeping up. They were actually faster, I think, at that point in the race than Verstappen was on the mediums. Then we had the biggest conspiracy theory of all time with Yuki Tsunoda coming into the pits, stopping out on track, saying, "Oh, the wheel's loose." And then they're like, no, everything looks fine on the data. Just come on in. So he went slowly around the track, came in, and this started the biggest conspiracy theory ever, that Red Bull told AlphaTauri to cause a safety car so that Verstappen could pit again and give him track position back, essentially, which he didn't even cause the safety car the first time. It was virtual. The first time ended up being a virtual safety car, which did give Verstappen a cheap pit stop, didn't necessarily solve the issue. But the conspiracy theorists, and I'm going to call out Team LH here specifically, were flying off the handle on Twitter saying, like, this is Red Bull made AlphaTauri break down on purpose so that they could let Max win the race. This is so bad to say that people were like sending death threats to the chief strategist for Red Bull, Hannah Schmitz, I want to say her name is.
Mm-hmm.
So bad to where AlphaTauri had to like put out a press release saying, like, you guys need to chill the fuck out. People need to stop taking this so seriously. It's just a sport. But anyway, then, as we know, Terry Bodas blew up, which caused a full safety car. They had to come through the pit lane for that, and during such time, George said, I need softs. So they pitted George, which took George out of the way between Max and Lewis. So it was then the running order was Lewis on decently old hards, Max on fresh softs, George right behind him on fresh softs. Restarted literally the first straightaway. Max passed Lewis literally inch perfectly, by the way, because you're not allowed to pass until the start finish line, and he was like less than a wing behind him before they hit the finish line or start finish line. And then it was all she wrote. So what do you guys think? Do you think Merck had the chance? Do you think if they double stacked or if they pitted, they could have fought back from the lead? Do you think that Red Bull has that much control that they would risk literally their standings in the championship to pit their car so they could get Max a home win? Tinfoil hat time. What do we got?
I mean, clearly it was all Yuki's brainchild. He was just like, you know what? I want to take one for the team so badly that I'm going to pretend that the wheels are falling off. And, that was it. I think it's ridiculous, man. I think no driver wants to play into team orders, let alone organization orders. I mean, they're not even, it's so over the top. I think that I didn't really think about the stacking thing until you said it earlier before we started recording, but I think that's actually an interesting potential possibility. If Mercedes went that route, it would have been much closer. I still just think that Max he would have, he would have won. He's going to win. He's in a better car. He's a better driver this year. Like, there's just not many things that are going to stop that. And to your point, the timing on that pass is like a perfect example of like, just, you are on the top of your game, right? Compared to everybody else on the field. Not that Lewis really would have had a shot, right? Like, Lewis has got, hards on at that point, mediums on at that point. And
I think it was hard still. Oh no, they had pitted. Yeah. Anyway,
Max is on, a better set of tires, and he's also got, he he's getting that NASCAR slingshot draft going, coming around the corners and stuff, and you're just like, there's just nothing that's going to stop that, unfortunately. And I think that, had Lewis like outpaced Russell for the rest of the race, maybe we could have a different conversation about the conspiracy theories and stuff. But like, clearly George had the tire change, was in a better position. Max is still going to win, but
Max is going to win. It's a boring season. And when you're bored, you have to look at these little silver linings of conspiracy to make the medicine go down a little bit easier. I'm in agreement with what you guys said. There isn't anything I can say that's revolutionary. Red Bull is very good this year. They've got the reps in to literally come from behind in whatever circumstance or scenario you can come up with as a race fan. And similarly, I think Mercedes of previous years might have done a better job handling that challenge, but they haven't had the reps this year of being a team that's been leading from the front. As much as Fernando Alonso wants the world to know, Lewis tended to do better when he raced from front because that's all he did for the last 8 years. He hasn't had that experience, so I do think there's a certain degradation of muscle memory. We need to just kind of give the devil his due. So Max Verstappen, good job. And I am surprised that Team LH, probably one of the most nuanced and subtle fan bases around, could not comprehend that this was happening. And it's a real damn shame that you guys as a whole can't come up with this. And if you want to talk to me about it, you can reach out to me at MadWatcher789 on Twitter. And we'll have a civil discussion about the fact that your boy looks a little past it this year. Thank you for your time.
Subtle and nuanced is exactly what I would describe Team LH as.
I was trying to come up with synonyms that started with an L and H for subtle and nuanced, and I just couldn't do it. So sorry, I failed all my English teachers.
Lunatics and harebrained. I don't know,
sir. We're not going to do that. Come on, they're dear friends of mine.
I respect Lewis. I think he's probably the GOAT. I mean, I don't know. Probably Senna still for me, but like he's in the conversation for sure. But this is like the negative effect of the Drive to Survive influx of fans because they don't understand like the mechanics of the sport, and then they're like racism or conspiracy or it's like a orange man bad, which is funny because it kind of works about two things. It's like that kind of response to everything. And I just can't, like you both said, this was Max's race to you can't even say Max's race to lose. It was Max's race to win twice if he wanted to. The pace was there. I do think when we were talking about this in the pre-show, Nick, you mentioned it, so I'll talk about it again. There was a chance, and I was watching the Jolyon Palmer's analysis of the race that's on F1 TV. If you guys want to check it out, but he was saying there was an opportunity for during the safety car because they went through the pit lane and the race order was Hamilton, or not race order, I should say the cars in order going through the pit lane was Hamilton, Latifi, the GOAT, then Russell, then Max. So Russell could have backed up Max they could have tried to double stack there. He could have maybe gotten in trouble for driving too slowly under the safety car, but they were all kind of bunched up right there, right into the entry to the pit lane. So he probably could have just slowed down as a safety thing, given enough time for Lewis to get in and get out so they could double stack and potentially keep Lewis ahead of Max on the same tire, which would have been a really exciting finish. Then you could have started talking conspiracy theory. If they got a penalty or not, that might be a valid question, but it could have happened. I don't know. I think Max, the only race that he might not, or the only race that someone else probably has a chance in, again, sounds like Singapore, based on the current car structures this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wins out. From the championship perspective, Leclerc needs him to DNF the next 4 races and Leclerc win the next 4, and then they can battle in the last 3 to keep it, close.
I mean, I think that the point of this whole topic is it's not necessarily new fans, right? It's literally just the nature of social media, people hopping on and getting, like, look, as every press release after some dumb shit happens says, emotions are high. You're like, well, no shit, but I don't go fucking saying some derogatory shit towards people. Like, I don't do that. Why do these people do this? And I think that's like part of the like group, the mob mentality that happens when people watch the race together and through social media. And it just sucks that it sucks primarily because one, we expect better from Lewis's fan base because of how great Lewis is as a human being. Fans don't equal the driver, right? Or the athlete in this. But I also think that, like, what's her name? Hannah Schmitz?
Schmitz, I think, yeah.
Yeah. She's like one of the few like prominent women figures in Formula One. And to me, like, I don't know. I feel like it's like even worse that this is going at her, and all of the death threats and shit is like just so ridiculous to me. But like the fact that like you're in this sport that, like, I mean, I would say that we as fans would love to see more diversity and more change happening in the sport for the better. And yet here we are talking about some stupid shit from a group that, not to say that they're the most well-spoken on the internet, but like we would expect better from them, So I think that's the hardest part about it. And it's just super disappointing. And conspiracy theories will always exist, right? That's also part of the fun. It's just like draw the line at, like, I don't know, somewhere. If death threats are 10, start at 3 and cut it off there, and just let 4 through 10 live in in your head only, don't say that part out loud if that's how you really feel. Also, try taking a chill pill if that's how you really feel.
Yeah, it ain't that serious.
There's a reason why there's a drafts folder, and there's a reason why 85% of those things should never leave said draft folder. So that's all I'm going to contribute, because Nick hit the nail on the head. And if you truly feel that something so out of your control resorts to you making death threats to people that have no impact on the circumstance that made you angry, do better. And we can list mental health phone numbers jokingly and not jokingly at the end of this episode, but this is one of those things. We are all fans of niche things between the three of us, and we always roll our eyes and just kind of shake our heads whenever our niche thing takes the spotlight in terms of the dumbest human of the week. And good job, Formula One. You've kind of been hitting it on the nail. You've been rising above all the other stupidity in this world for a little bit of a year now. So let's do better. Let's kind of regress back to the mean if we can.
Speaking of stupid things, can we outlaw flares? Like, I get it. I get that it's like a big, like, Dutch thing.
I'm orange. He's orange. I'm going to celebrate and smoke for him. It's the worst phase. Why not have a big old orange Gatorade toss? Another reason why America's better than Europe in terms of celebrations. Our celebrations are cheeky and fun. Their shenanigans are cruel and terrible. I'm losing my voice, so I'm trying to end big. Anyway, I've said my piece.
I mean, I think they look cool. I get it, right? It's kind of like fireworks, right? I get that stuff is exciting for people, but it seems like it's just gotten way out of hand, right?
But like Max's fans travel well, right? That's why he's got 7 home Grand Prix now. So there's the Orange Army everywhere. They'll be in, COTA. They were in Miami. They're going to be in Vegas. They'll be in Interlock. They're everywhere. But like, apparently they had signs all weekend at the entrances saying like, if you have flares, turn them in. That's just not enough. F1 or track promoters or event promoters, whoever's organizing these races, there needs to be some sort of baggage check or something. Like, luckily, the rest of the world, you don't have to go through a metal detector to get into a thing like you do here because nobody's toting guns or shoot up the place, whatever. But there needs to be some sort of check because I've talked about this before, but the smoke during the event, I think, is dangerous from a driver's perspective, most importantly. But then we had not one, but two flares thrown onto the track this weekend. One during qualifying, and I guess one was at the end of qualifying. And it was apparently thrown onto the track by an actual security guard at the event. According to the footage I saw, he was wearing like the security shirt, and he looked like super smug and proud of himself that he did it. And I don't know if he was trying to get it out of the stands or something, but he threw it onto the track, which is like the absolute worst place you can throw it over the back of the grandstands or something. Jesus Christ. But they need to do something about this because it's getting out of hand. And at some point, one of these drunk assholes, whether it be a Dutch guy or not, is going to throw it during like a flying lap, and it's going to hit a driver, and the driver's going to smash into a wall. So there's my PSA on flares. And it's not even cool fireworks. That's like the snakes of fireworks. Like smoke grenades when we were kids were like, cool for like 30 seconds, and then we wanted to blow something up with an M80. Get bottle rockets. Actually, no, that's a terrible idea. They're going to shoot them at the drivers. Just don't bring fucking fireworks to a race. They have fireworks anyway. We saw at this weekend when Max beat everyone by like 15 seconds. He went down the pit straight and fireworks went off.
Well, and that's the thing that's gonna really suck about it is it's not gonna be just smoke flares and whatever that's banned, right? It's gonna be every type of thing under the sun because everything becomes a projectile in in those situations. So I don't know. I think we're headed towards the flares getting banned anyway, right? Like there's just the more of this dumb shit happens, the more look Formula One can't have some. I mean, I don't know if the guy's a security guard or just wearing a security outfit or whatever, but like either way, whether you're a fan, whether you're on the track, whether you're a worker, like that shit just can't happen. And I think we're just heading towards more of a lockdown for this type of stuff, which ultimately takes away the fun for the young kids that are going to go and be a part of it because they're not the ones causing a bunch of ruckus, but like it's kind of like, to your point about fireworks, right? It's like kids, a 8-year-old kid holding the sparkler, like that's a life changing experience. A 40-year-old that's pissed that he can't bring his flares into the next race is like now you're going to have somebody doing even more dumb shit because they're mad that they can't bring their flares to the race. Just not that important. Just enjoy the racing. Enjoy the sport.
I'm just tickled by the fact that there are banners that are asking these noble people to turn their flares in as if that's going to do something. Because when's the last time you guys have been to a sporting event and you do what a banner tells you to do?
I was an unfortunate I was an unfortunate smoker for a very long time, and I tailgated Raider games for a very long time and would always find a way to sneak a cigarette in at all times, even though you're not allowed to in Raider Stadium. It's just human nature.
Yep. But then again, I also am the one that starts chanting defense in the first quarter of a preseason game at the NBA, so really we all have our faults.
There's always that guy. There's always that guy. Couple other topics, unless you guys wanted to discuss lame fireworks anymore. So I think we touched on it quickly, but Alpine is on a run. Both their drivers are performing. Alonso is just making Alpine regret them screwing up his contract even more. or screwing with his contract and not offering him 2 years, as Aaron corrected me on last time, which is why he went to Aston Martin in the first place. But that leads me to say these contract talks, the contract recognition board officially this week, or I guess was it last week? I think it was last week. Confirmed that McLaren is getting Piastri. But details came out this week about how badly Alpine screwed this up. And everyone was mad at McLaren for like driver shopping and stealing people. And we know they stole a bunch of drivers in IndyCar. Maybe they're just really good at this because they completely went by the book and signed Piastri after Piastri had already told them, told Alpine, I should say, hey, like, I'm looking around. You guys have screwed up the contract talks. They missed a ton of deadlines dating back to, like, I want to say December last year. And they kept missing deadlines. So he finally, in March, I think, started saying, like, okay, I'm talking to other people, told the team, even went as far as to tell the team, like, apparently, supposedly told the team, like, I've signed with another team. And then they came and told him while he was in the simulator that, like, hey, we're promoting you to the race seat. And he didn't know what to say. So he just was like, thanks. Like, literally, that's according to his description. He awkwardly was like, thank you. Didn't know what to say. So that brings up the driver market talk. I just wanted to point that piece out, that Alpine's apparently the idiots here. It's all but confirmed that Pierre Gasly is now leaving AlphaTauri for Alpine, and Dr. Evil, Helmut Marko, has confirmed that they are trying to get Colton Herta, and then Christian Horner also confirmed the same thing and said, we are going after Colton Herta if we can get him a super license. So that shakes things up a bit, right? Because Pierre Gasly to Alpine, Colton Herta to AlphaTauri. I'm guessing they keep Yuki now. So that leaves Williams, Alfa Romeo, kinda, but I think that they're going to keep both of their drivers. And Haas. What do you guys think happens there?
I mean, I think that Alpine has basically been watching Ferrari screw things up all season and was like, hold my beer. It's time for us to get really serious about screwing things up.
Hold my wine.
But,
they're French. They're a little more
yeah,
cultured.
that's right. Sorry, wine. I mean, I just think it's, I don't know. I'm beginning to think that maybe this is the conspiracy theorist in myself, but I'm beginning to think that all of this stuff is way more dramatized than for Netflix than it really is. That makes sense. You know, like are we going to see this type of stuff on Netflix? Because it makes for great entertainment if that's what it's for.
No, I get.
But
where
I'm
you're
starting to
coming
wonder,
from.
like, how much of it is like real.
No, I was just gonna say I get where you're coming from, Nick. Because if the presence of those cameras isn't there, is this really as sensational as we think? Probably. But then at the same time, we know enough about the Netflix business that they have to cultivate new storylines every year as long as they continue to do this show. And right now, I guarantee you, they're salivating at the fact that if this Alpine thing is true, you have two bitter rivals that have grown up together on the French track as youths, and they still don't like each other. And that is going to be combustible. Now, one thing I will say is, yeah, Alpine looks like a bunch of dummies. I'll be the first to say it as a resident Alpine fanboy. But I think Fernando Alonso is getting a bit ahead of himself, because if he's trying to punish Alpine, probably one of the worst ways to punish Alpine is to join one of their rivals behind them, because I don't think he's going to be as good next year.
Alonso's known for getting everything out of a car that shouldn't have it. So it seems like, especially shout out Vitch Tits, he's been on a run of form this week. It seems like Aston Martin's finally getting their copycat car together a little bit because their pace has improved dramatically. Can't really say that about Seb, but I think Seb is just in La La Land dreaming about bees, his bee hotel, whatever. But Stroll's looked really good in the last couple races. Maybe it's track specific, but who knows? But Alpine, like, back to the original question you guys had, like, is it dramatized for Drive to Survive? There's no way. Alpine's not going to be like, hey, you know what? We're going to challenge this with the contract recognition board, even though we don't have a case. And then we're going to end up having to pay, like, I think it was like $500,000 total, because they had to pay McLaren's lawyer fees. They had to pay the contract recognition board for their time, and then pay their own legal fees. And it was like estimated to be like $500,000. They're not going to waste $500,000 on that. There's no way. So I think it's just Alpine really, really taking a page out of the Ferrari playbook, like Nick said. But they lost, I think, one of the top drivers on the grid in Fernando Alonso. They then lost the most exciting prospect on the grid in Oscar Piastri. And then they signed, to your point, Rohit, two drivers that literally still hate each other. What the hell are they thinking? Like, oh, let's sign bitter rivals and put them on the same team and then make them compete against each other. They're not going to, like, work together. Can you imagine team orders? In that,
it's one of those recurring clouds that seems to follow the Bandit around. Like, with the exception of maybe Daniel Ricciardo, it seems every single one of his teammates he seems to have some sort of fatal flaw with, and it's going to be really interesting to see that have both of these drivers matured enough that they can let bygones be bygones. And to your point, Todd, are they going to work together? Because I think if they are going to work together, I really like that midfield pairing. But at the same time, for me right now, the floor and the ceiling for that team are the fact that this almost could be a running back of the old Racing Point team with Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez. And this kind, if I'm being entirely too kind to Esteban Ocon, maybe he's a Sergio Perez in this because he's been a little bit better than Gasly over the last 18 months. But then again, we haven't seen Gasly in a great car, so maybe Gasly also has returned to form. They're going to be the most interesting team to me to watch going forward if they make that marriage happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the more interesting piece to all of these changes is probably maybe getting ahead of myself, but Colton Herta drives for Andretti in IndyCar, right? So what does that mean? Because that to me is even more interesting. We've kind of brushed that under the rug in a lot of ways, where it's like, well, it's not going to happen. The FIA is not going to let it happen. Blah blah blah. But like, this seems like another wedge to keep that door just slightly open, in my opinion.
Going down that conspiracy theory, Andretti buys AlphaTauri because I think Red Bull wants out of AlphaTauri because their AlphaTauri clothing brand isn't supporting it. Plus, the director or creator of Red Bull, whatever his name is, another supervillain type, is like 80 something, and he wants to set this out for the long term. And Red Bull can't afford two teams in this kind of hyperinflated F1 market that we have, all these $1 billion teams or whatever they're worth. They sell and AlphaTauri to Andretti, then it becomes like Andretti AlphaTauri, something like, it's got a nice ring to it, kind of. And then we have Colton Herta driving for Andretti anyway. Conspiracy theory. There you go.
Yeah.
And now the Porsche deal fell apart, which we can get into, but they need an influx of money to build Red Bull powertrains, or they keep Honda. I don't know. One of those two things happen. I could see them selling AlphaTauri either way. It definitely doesn't have the same cachet as Benetton, the colors of Benetton did. Plus, that livery was sick.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's on a very old F1 team for those newer listeners.
I feel educated.
Okay, last thing on the driver market. It's just me rambling now. During the driver parade, DR, and this is my little DR corner for the episode, DR and Checo were walking out during the driver parade, and somebody on a phone or whatever not caught so much, but he was talking to Checo as they were walking out through the little entranceway. DR was talking about taking a year off with the seats shrinking, the number of open seats, I should say, shrinking, and him not necessarily wanting to take a step back to a backmarker team like Haas-ish or Williams, definitely still being a backmarker next year. Seems all but likely. What do you guys think? You think he takes a year off, even though he's kind of older and maybe won't get back in?
I think it's a bad move if he does. I think at his age and with the way he drove this year, he needs to be in a seat to be in people's minds, because taking a year off is just going to leave room for a younger, more long-term, driver, potentially more long-term driver, to step into a seat that he could probably be in. And to our conversations around Danny Ricciardo, going to another racing body of some sorts anywhere is not going to help his case for being in a Formula One car. Like if he takes time off, I think he doesn't come back to Formula One. I think he goes to IndyCar or NASCAR or sports car. I mean, he'd be killer in like Le Mans, right? American, or not American Le Mans, but like FIA, WEC,
WEC.
William Jordan Challenge stuff. Yeah. That would be amazing, because there's not a lot of there's some great personalities, but they don't have like world famous celebrity, experience in that racing. But that racing is really entertaining to watch. So, and Porsche's in it. So, or they'll be back in it, I think next year, season after. I can't remember.
So what you're saying is you want him to go to WEC and drive for Porsche.
My first hope for Danny is to stay in Formula One somehow. If that's Haas, that would be my first choice, because then I would just become a super Haas fan. And is it Aaron's team, all Haas, no brakes? I mean, that's we get the shirts made at that point if Danny Rick signs with Haas. But also, I understand, you don't want to go race for teams below where you've been at, right? But look, look at the NBA. Gary Payton, Mitch Richmond, all signed up to play for the Lakers.
Getting them checks. I mean, I would say this. I think take the year off, because if there's one thing absence does, it makes the heart grow fonder. And we've seen it with Kevin Magnussen. We've seen it with Nico Hülkenberg. The longer that they're away from the track and the grid, people tend to romanticize their racing careers. And the minute you see an underachieving young driver, what's the first ailment, or what's the first solution to that? Bring in the most established presence you can. And I think that could help Daniel Ricciardo. So I'll play devil's advocate to you, Nick, because I think he's got enough cult of a personality as is to always be on that short list of replacement drivers. But I think take a break, be that diplomat that we've always argued him to be the Australian Pat McAfee, be F1's equivalent to Stephen A. Smith, wink, and build the brand up. So then when you do come back, it feels like an even bigger deal, because you helped kind of build this groundswell of emotion and excitement around the sport.
Yeah, I'm going to say I would lean on Nick's side. I hope he doesn't take the time off. I don't think he would come back in to F1. He doesn't seem like the type that's just like, I'm going to, go race some other little series or just take the time off like Hülkenberg and just sit on the couch and then, wait for race teams to call him. He's too much of a personality. He's got too many other interests. I think he owns like a brewery and a winery and several other types of businesses. I think he would just step into that. Plus, he's been on all types of American TV. I think he would just become an unofficial American at that point, which I also hope he goes to Haas, because I think he could hold his own against either Mick or Kevin Magnussen. And it would give him a chance to prove his worth over the last 2 years of bad racing. And then maybe he gets a call up to another team higher up the grid. Who knows? He also said something about potentially becoming a reserve driver. And there's murmurs about him possibly being the Mercedes reserve driver. which would be strange. But like, I don't think Merck's going to give him the seat if Lewis retired. That just doesn't make any sense.
No, I was going to say they spent an unusually large amount of time on Nick DeVries this weekend because every time I looked up when I was watching the race, I swear they're like, "Oh, here's Nick DeVries, Mercedes race car driver in reserve." Is it DeVries?
Yeah, Nick DeVries. I don't think he's ever going to get a seat in F1, which is sad because he's super talented. He's I think a now 2-time Formula E champion, and he's leading the standings this year. But I just think he is the permanent reserve driver, which if he's racing and winning all these other series, then maybe he's okay with that. Who knows? I hope DR stays on the grid for my fanboyism alone. I'll be very sad.
Yep, me too. All right, let's wrap up. Let's talk about these fantasy standings.
Let's do it. We'll start with the Voldemort League. I'm actually prepared this time. I don't need you to vamp, bro.
Oh, damn it.
Sorry for taking your favorite time of the pod. It's very likely that like half the grid on this Voldemort League has given up because we have several zeros. Nick, you didn't give up. Your team had a shite week. But in third place, Jackal, shout out to you for the review again. In second place is myself. And in first place is Julie Wood for the week. League standings overall, I'm still in first. Actually, it's the same three people. I'm still in first with about 130-point lead. Julie Wood is in second, and Jackal is in third. Nick, you're in fifth, and Fight No Cons is seventh, currently. Moving over to the F1 official Fantasy League, Exhaust Notes League, whatever you want to call it. For the week, let's see here. In P3, we had the Trap Beat, where you can find Rohit online to talk to him respectfully about Team LH. With 189 points. Gunther's Dream Team in P2, John S., with 193 points. And I had the top spot for the week with 212 points. Moving on to the season standings after race 13 or 14, whatever that was. In P1, we have All Haas No Brakes. Shout out Aaron. I'm still in second place with a little less than 100 point, about a 70-point deficit. And in third place, Alpha Ash Ari, Mr. Mega Drive, or Mr. and Mrs. Mega Drive, I should say. I know that's
Mega Drive.
Let's see. Team 1, Ro, you are currently in P8, and the Speeding Burritos are currently just outside the points in P13. Real tight race, though, between points there. So you still could do it. And the most important league here. Here we go. For the week, in P4, we had Ro with 42 points.
Fuck you, Bottas.
In P3, Nick with 51 points, even though he's got Max with his fifth win in a row. Stacking those P1s. In P2, Aaron with 52 points, just edging him out. And I don't know, lucked my way into P1 this week with 62 points. So the overall season standings, starting to pull out a bit of a lead. Not feeling quite as confident as Max yet, but I'm liking this where we are right now. So in fourth place, Aaron with 723. In P3, we have Nick with 745. Right in front of him, 5 points ahead, Rohit with 750, and I am in P1 with 780. And there's your fantasy.
I think we need to put a
updates.
request out for the team Exhaust Notes, Team EN, to come up with some conspiracy theories as to how Todd is winning all of the fantasy leagues. Because clearly he wouldn't just be able to win all these leagues. He had to have, like, he's probably got some sort of Yuki,
No. I'm a member of Team TY. First of all, how dare you? Second of all, that man races on intelligence, integrity, and intensity. He's a Kurt Angle disciple. And I will not have you besmirch the character of my dear friend, Toddworth Jerome Yates. Jerome, let him have it. How dare he? How dare he?
Sorry. Emotions are high.
Nick taking a page out of Team LH's handbook. I can't believe this. As we talked about in this like preseason fantasy draft, how you said you just like always lose fantasy. I played fantasy football for a long time, and my team got the nickname of Yates. So my last name is Yates, and I would always draft really well, and then all of my starters would get hurt within the first few weeks. So my team had the Yates. Dark joke, but it's there. I don't know why I'm doing well, but I've been screaming into the void about F1 for a really long time by myself. And now I have all these friends, so maybe God's shining down on me a little. Like, hey, look, you paid attention
God's
to something for a really long time. You kind of know what you're talking about.
You know what rhymes with Yates? Greats. And that's how I feel after listening to Todd in these 90-minute installments. I feel great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I was just kidding. I don't need anybody to harass Todd. But if you do want to harass Todd, he's about to tell you how you can find him outside of this show. So
I am Rohizi on Twitter. And no, I'm kidding. I'm T-Easy on Instagram, T-EasyF1 on Twitter. Come follow me.
Identity theft is not a joke, Todd.
From the guy who has like 6 different Twitter handles per episode.
6 different Twitter handles for 6 different members of our Discord. And if you join at the $1.99 platform, you can also be one of those aliases in a future episode. But you can follow me on Twitter at Rohizi. You can follow me at IG at Roadm. My social security number no, not going to do that. All right, Todd. Nick, back to you.
You can follow me at Nick Engvall on all platforms. Make sure you follow Exhaust Notes FM everywhere so you can have more of these conversations. And like these guys said, hit the link in the description to join the Discord and the rest of the community, because there's a lot of great people in there. And they all are in these fantasy leagues, which we will dive into again next season. But I think just looking at Rohit's work on the spreadsheet this week, I realized that next year is going to be we're going to be like Max Verstappen level of fantasy leagues next year. So you guys should be a part of the community before we get to that point. Get to know some people.
Plus, it's less.
We appreciate y'all rocking with us.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. Sorry.
We appreciate y'all rocking with us and listening to us. Thanks for the support. We'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.
Laters.